Okay, oh, you will. I have no doubt. You got it. Hey, everybody. How you doing today? Okay. So we got that. All right. Hey, we got a lot to talk about. Good end of night, everyone. Now that is a good one, Dave. Linda, how you doing? Let me know if you all can hear. Can you hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me. Please, please, please let me know. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know. 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 Need you to let me know. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Samantha, Andre, Dave, let me know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm up to Pastor Brooks too.
Okay. Hey, Darius, how you doing? Good morning, baby. I need you to get right to it. Go inside of 5 minutes. Give me 4, okay?
Gotcha.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm trying to do a couple of things at one time. Just stay right there. Pastor Brooks. Okay. Okay, here we go. There we go. Let's go. News reports say the Biden administration is weighing whether to release more oil from the nation's strategic petroleum reserve. Okay. All right. Pastor Brooks, let people know before we get on the air how they can. You are just, I want you to let them know that they can come and get food, right? Give them the address and how they can join you virtually or in person on Sunday, okay? Okay. So make sure you do that. Make sure you do that. That's very important. Okay, and what I need you to start doing is push out the fact that you're on the show.
Okay.
And if you could make that announcement on Sunday, that would be great. Okay. Just let them know they can catch you here on Thursdays. Okay. Okay. That would help me a lot. Okay. Thank you, sweetie. Okay. So let's get right to it, everybody. Got a lot to talk about today. We'll be moving around a lot. How many of you, did any of you quit your jobs during this period, this great resignation, reset, whatever they're calling it, a lot of different things, but there's a lot.
30 seconds.
Okay. Have a great show, Matt. Thank you, hon.
Thank you. You too. And I'm in 10 seconds.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, March 31st, 2022. I'm coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, Chicago's Progressive Talk. But we used to be Air America, but now we're just coming to you from the heartland. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you also from AM 950 Radio. Chad Larson and Reverend McAfee and Spike Moss and Gary Hines and the Sound of Blackness and all my friends and family up there, Senator Klobuchar, sending you much love today. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today on the Santita Jackson Show. Did you know, coming out of Minnesota, coming out of Minneapolis, that no progress has been made since George Floyd was killed? That is to say, U.S. police have been killing 3 people a day in the United States since that awful time in May of 2020. What do you think about that? Did you know that? Oh my gosh, we've got to talk about that. And then we're going to be talking about former President Trump's rising poll numbers and President Biden's falling poll numbers. What is going on and what does that portend for 2024? And of course, Dr. Max Wolf will be with us to talk about this great reset, the great resignation. What do you think is going on? Have you left your job? Are you looking to leave your job? They say there are more jobs than people looking for them, but something is not right here. We need to talk about that. And then health equity and what happened with Bruce Willis. My goodness. Can you imagine? He's only 67 and yet he's going to have to retire from film because of aphasia. Going to have to ask doctors Shanina Knighton, registered nurse, and our epidemiologist, Dr. Deborah Verholten, about that. But we also want to know about health equity. That is something that she's going to NYU to discuss on a global level. And we cannot wait to hear what she has to say about that, because as they are peeling back the money on COVID, on you're getting free vaccines, on you're getting free tests that you actually pay for, but that would be absorbed by the government collectively. We need to know what health equity really means and why we really need it at this time. So let's get to some of these headlines so that we can get to some good news from Pastor Darius Brooks of Grace Central Church in Westchester, Illinois. Chicago will have a high of 41 degrees, rain and a mix of snow. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, snow showers, 42 degrees will be the high. The Raptors, well, they bested the Timberwolves last night, 125 to 102. And let's see what's going to happen with the Clippers as they meet the Bulls in Chicago. March Madness is the order of the day. We're going to see what's going to happen. And Tiger Woods, everybody, he might be coming back. Can you imagine? Just after that awful accident, we wondered if he would even be able to walk again. What a guy. What if he shows up at Augusta this year? Boy, I'll be the first one cheering. Russian forces are still pounding the cities of Kiev and Chernihiv, according to CNN, just after Russia claimed to reduce military activity in the areas as part of a possible peace agreement. Heavy shelling continued in the eastern part of Ukraine today as the Russian military has appeared to shift its focus to the Donbass region. We'll be keeping our eyes open to see what's going to happen there. Several state legislatures have advanced bills restricting abortion access, adding to a growing number of GOP-led states looking to chip away at abortion rights in the United States. Arizona Republican Governor Doug Ducey signed a bill that acts as a near total ban on abortion in the states after 15 weeks. In Kentucky, the state's House and Senate have approved a similar 15-week ban that also restricts access to medication abortion and makes it more difficult for a minor to obtain an abortion in the state. What do you think about that, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278 or meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That's my official Facebook page. Don't go to the Santita Jackson page. Please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page and become my friend there. They're kicking people off of Santita Jackson. So please go to Santita Jackson and Friends and meet us over here on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show. Meet Linear Bob and Dave Dowling and everybody else. Hey, Shirley from Philadelphia and Barbara Bacon and everybody else. President Biden is considering releasing about 1 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to alleviate persistently high drug prices. Well, you were a lucky person if you were in Boston last night. Chris Rock performed to two sold out houses, everybody. But people were a little disappointed because he said, look, I'm still trying to process what happened. So he said he'll talk about what happened at the Oscars on Sunday night when Will Smith slapped him. He said he'll talk about that at another time. But now we find out that the Academy is looking for a way to discipline Will Smith. It turns out that he was asked to leave once he slapped and verbally confronted Chris Rock, but he refused to go. Wow, what will happen there? Some people are saying that he might face a temporary suspension. More than likely, according to Whoopi Goldberg, and she is on the board of governors of the Academy, she said, no, I don't think we're going to ask him to give his Oscar back, but we're not going to take it from him. But something has to be done. Bruce Willis, one of our favorites for more than 30 years. You remember him in Moonlighting and then, of course, Die Hard, and what a great career he's had. At the age of 67, he has had to retire because of cognitive issues. He has something called aphasia. And many people had been noticing that he had been struggling on set. He could not communicate with people. He couldn't really speak. He couldn't remember. Well, it's aphasia. And his family came out with a lovely statement yesterday telling us that they're surrounding him with love and that he is going to have to make his exit from what has been a magnificent career. Just praying for the family of Bruce Willis today. We've got Pastor Darius Brooks with us today. Pastor Darius Brooks, talk to us. Give us some good news. Grace Central, so blessed to have you always, always. What's going on today? Yes.
Really understand that being enlightened is God has a script for us to make sure that everything we're doing in life makes sense. Santita, and we got to make sense out of how we're doing things in life. Our everyday life, we have to make sense out of everything we're doing. Santita, once a man's mind has expanded, it never regains its original form. Once a man's mind has expanded, it never regains its original form. And once we start understanding how important being enlightened is, turns out to be kind of sort of what Tiger Woods is doing. You never give up. You never go in the towel. It's nurturing to digest. It's good to embrace life changing when you use it. And what a peaceful place when you understand that God requires us to always be enlightened. And once we expand our mind, it never goes back to the way we used to think. You can believe what you want, but it better be something that's working for you. And faith is one of those things that we must have without a shadow of doubt. And faith literally gives us the desires of our hearts, Santita, because faith is literally and figuratively the substance of things hoped for. Things in Hebrew means thoughts. Whenever we read the word of God, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. Things means thoughts. So now it's a little bit differently when the word of God says in 2 Peter, to the things study to show thyself approved unto God, and workman need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So when you see this word things in the Bible, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. It's not the things I'm doing, it's utilizing his thoughts for my real situation. And so now it's a little differently. When we want to be enlightened, he says, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. And the person who wants to be enlightened says, you know what? Apparently this is a lie against God's will. I was sharing with Grace Central on Sunday. When you study God's word, then Peter, hear the heart. Everything that God's word says is true. When we're religious, we just understand religious order. Religion are a group of people who simply believe what they believe. And those are pretty much Christians. When you become a believer, Santita, how and what we believe is how we design ourselves to live. Yeah. What you believe, that's how you design yourself to live. And just wonderful, there was a young person came to my church, and he says, Pastor, I want to come. The Spirit of God spoke to me and told me to come to your church and help you with deliverance, of demons. And I said, sir, God didn't tell you to come here. He said, yes, he did. I said, no, he didn't. His wife was sitting there. Make a long story short, Santita. I said, the reason God didn't tell you to come here is because you can't serve two masters. You must believe in one and hate the other. And he said, so you don't believe in demons? I said, absolutely not. I believe in Jesus the Christ. I said, now wait a minute. You don't either. And then we went back and forth, and he told me, how you going to tell me what I believe? I said, because you don't believe in demons. You believe there are demons. And when you believe there are demons, that ain't got nothing to do with you, because you believe in Jesus the Christ. Everything we do in life, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually, socially, culturally, verbally, sexually, professionally, personally, we have to be enlightened, because there's a promise at the end of the day if we are believers.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Amen to that. Amen to that. I love that. I love that. I love that. You say you don't believe in them. You believe they exist. And we can say that about our fears. We can do that about anything, everybody. Be careful. Be careful what you invest in. You know what? People are coming to your church because more and more people are hungry. Literally, they are hungry. And you are feeding them. Give us your church address and give us the days that we can come to Grace so that we can get some food, get some Grace.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 5 till 7, we feed the community 7 townships, and they're around the corner from the church. Actually, we got to build because we run out of space. We're doing a capital campaign right now, so because we run out of space, we can't do it. So Tuesdays from 5 till 7, and we give in between $200, almost $250, $300 worth of food to each family, 300 to 600 families, and then on Wednesdays from 12 to noon, from noon to 2. We do the scenes because we don't want them out late. And we're also getting ready to do literacy, the financial literacy. Santita, I'm so excited. We're going to start teaching young kids how to buy homes. I was talking to my daughter. She's at TSU. And she said, Daddy, do you know the school I went to, they never taught us how to buy a home. So I'm doing a special class just on that. No funding. No funding. We got to do it. We don't wait till people to do things.
Absolutely. So let us know when that begins so that we can be supportive of that.
You got it. Yeah. Yes. And Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. GraceCentral.net. GraceCentral.net. GraceCentral.net.
Everybody, please go there. And yes, this Darius Brooks. Your will is what's best for me. Safe in his arms. Yeah, that one, the Grammy winner. He's also a pastor, everybody. I love you, Pastor Darius Brooks. Love you so much.
I love you too.
Love you so much. Have some people who we want to help you be involved. I'm going to get some people involved with you in this financial literacy. You know what? We're talking with Dr. Deborah Holden, epidemiologist, associate dean of public health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. She is the incoming dean for global public health at New York University. We cannot wait to see where that is going to lead her, and we're so grateful for the expanding responsibilities of the brilliant Dr. Shanina Knighton. She's been a gift that Dr. Verholden has brought to us. Registered nurse. My goodness, she has done so much. She's an infection preventionist. She's a clinical research scholar at Case Western Reserve University. I have a couple of questions for you today. Well, let me start with this headline question. Bruce Willis has aphasia. Aphasia. Can either of you ladies explain what that is? They said he was having cognitive issues on set. He might not understand what you're saying to him. He might not be able to speak. Then they just literally had to pull him from his career. And some people are saying that, he was making poor career choices because of aphasia. What is it? Dr. Deb? Dr. Knighton? Okay. Okay, well, Dr. Knighton, aphasia.
can you repeat what about aphasia?
What is it? Because it sounds awful. It appears that he's been having cognitive issues on set for years now, for years. And some people are saying that he was making poor choices. I was reading an op-ed piece in the New York Post a little earlier, and they were saying that he was making poor career choices because, cognitively he was having some issues. And it's such a painful end to this decades-long career.
I get it, but I guess for me, my question is did he have a stroke? Like, what did he have? Because we're talking about aphasia, like aphasia, I guess like a language disorder.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's more.
Is that what you mean? Like,
No, yeah, because
somebody that have like a stroke or a head injury or some sort of like tumor or brain disease will like have the inability to like communicate.
Well, there was speculation, because the family did not say any more other than that he had aphasia. And so I guess it was just such a shock because he's still so vital at 67, and you see him releasing movies and he's been on set. It's just a painful end. But, let me hop to this. Dr. Deborah Verholden, yes, I'm sorry.
So now that's the thing, like there's dysphagia, but it's a difference. So I guess like that's my question, like, in regards to like I would have to know more about like the root cause of it, to be able to legitimately say like, okay, well, this is horrible and this is something that, may have been decided. Because people do make poor lifestyle habits that can lead to, let's say, high blood pressure that would lead to some sort of like stroke. So there are things that could have been like going on before that. So I would just have to know a little bit more.
Yeah.
In order for me to truly gauge.
Well, I guess, because you sound like the other medical professionals who were on television this morning, who were saying, we don't know if he had a stroke. We don't know what led to this. And so just praying for his family, because now, effectively they've got to take care of him. Can you imagine someone who cannot communicate? And that does happen often after strokes. People do have aphasia. But let me ask Dr. Deborah Verholden this. I've been reading a lot lately about health equity. Indeed, that is one of the top 10 health issues that the Biden administration wanted to address. And indeed, the World Economic Forum is saying that we've got to tackle health equity. Most of us don't know that this is really like a national and a global discussion. It's something that you brought to us, Dr. Deborah Verholden. As we're watching more and more money peeled away from COVID, more people who are uninsured are going to have to pay more than $100 for a PCR test. We still are the only industrialized nation not to have a national health care program. And our staying well drives us to bankruptcy. What is health equity, and could that help us get out of this hole that we are in with respect to our health care in the United States?
Sure. So we saw during COVID, right? People don't have the same opportunities for optimal health. That is true nationally and it's true globally. We've got people in rural parts of the country who live 100 miles from the nearest hospital. We've got weird things like insurance status linked to employment status. If you're going to think about it, if you are unemployed or underemployed, you are likely uninsured or underinsured. But the capitation of fees and rates only really applies for people with insurance. But people with insurance, you would think the people without insurance are the ones who need federal intervention to say you're not allowed to charge more than this amount for this service for this uninsured person. It's the contrary. People who are uninsured typically will be charged more for the same health care service as somebody who has insurance. So we don't have the kinds of things baked in to our healthcare system and our society in general that would ensure that everybody has fair opportunity and access to everything that one would need to be healthy. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is we very often don't account for the social and political conditions under which people are experiencing health and opportunity the weakest muscle for our nation. I'm happy to hear that leaders are now really starting to use the language, that people are starting to take it on. I worry about these things devolving to cute terms and becoming just a new, cachet that people have when they say things like the social determinants of health. But that's real. We understand that, food is medicine, right? Like people are literally preventing themselves from becoming ill and also helping to ease some of their illness simply by changing what they eat, what goes in and out of their mouth. But what you're able to eat and what you're able to afford is in large part influenced by your economics and what kind of access you have. So if you live in a community where there's not a high quality grocery store, or like when I moved to Flint, we didn't have one full line grocery store in the city of Flint when I moved back. How can you expect people to eat healthy when they don't have what they need to eat healthy? Whether it be access to high quality food, affordable high quality food, transportation to get to that food, knowledge about which foods are going to be best for them. So we're now starting to acknowledge that there are things outside of the individual that we also have to address if we really want to maximize the opportunity for everybody to achieve optimal health. And the last thing I'll say about it, it's also way more than healthcare. Every time in the past I would talk about healthcare and health equity, people would automatically start talking about healthcare. And healthcare is a part of the equation. And I'm not saying it's not important because it is. But we need so much healthcare in the first place because we have so much variation and so much inequity and opportunity and access. Right? We know stress is a leading driver of health. Stress causes all kinds of bad things happening underneath of the skin, and especially when they're in large doses and it's chronic and it's enduring, right? And we know that Black and brown people disproportionately face stress due to experiences of racism, both individual, interpersonal, as well as systematic and structural. We know that people who are economically struggling experience more stress because it's hard when you don't have the ability to keep the lights on and keep food on the table and provide for your family. But you got to think about it. Think about children. They're born into poverty.
I've got 10 seconds.
If any of us had a choice, no one would choose to be born poor. Who would want that? But kids are born into poverty, and their parents oftentimes are born into poverty. And it's hard to break those generational cycles. But how much money you make or how much money your parents make shouldn't be the biggest and strongest driver of, the kind of education that's available to you, or the quality of housing, or whether or not you can expect to live to be 65 and older.
Absolutely.
We know that is exactly how it works.
Absolutely, because it determines even the quality of the school that's in your neighborhood. And that it should not be. Everybody, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. No progress since George Floyd. That's right. The data is in. U.S. police are killing 3 people a day since George Floyd. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Sending you much love, Doctors Knighton and Deborah Verholden, incoming Dean for Global Public Health at NYU. Back in just a minute, everybody. Okay, everybody, hold on one second. James, you are absolutely, you're welcome to be here. What you cannot do is use foul language, and what you cannot do is be disrespectful to the other Morning Stars. I welcome everyone here, but I will disinvite you to leave immediately if you are disrespectful and if you use foul language. And I would invite all of my Morning Stars not to respond to James until James can deal with all of us respectfully. If you have an issue with the Morning Stars, with me, or with the subject that we tackle, call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. I want you to be an adult about this and call me and confront me if this is an issue. Otherwise, I invite you to leave if you cannot be respectful. That is the end of that. No one respond to James until James can speak to you in a respectful way. Now, we're going to be talking about George Floyd, everybody. U.S. policing, killing 3 people a day. Dr. Deborah Verholden, it's so wonderful hearing your voice today, and we've missed you. Ooh. I'm on my way there. Oh my gosh. How long are you going to be there?
I'm going to be there until Monday. We have so many great things going on. A ribbon cutting for our beautiful new building.
Oh, darn it, girl. I know I'm coming in. Actually, I'm coming in next week. Darn it. I'll be there, I think, Tuesday and Wednesday. Yeah. Oh, girl, please. It's a place to get acclimated to. I love it. But I'll be there. I think I'll be there. No, Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah. Yeah. So, yes. Okay. Well, that is fantastic. Well, ladies, well, he's going to bring those because I think we're going to have a couple of those lines. Okay, great. I'm sorry. I'm trying to line myself up here. So, everybody, I want you to call me at 773. Joyce said, yes. We missed you like crazy. Ow. That's right. 773-763-9278. Are you surprised? This is a mapping police violence report that shows that.
We have attorneys also in Patillo.
Fantastic. U.S. police are killing 3 people a day. You all can speak to attorneys Patillo and Hoffler, Doctors Knighton and Verholden, very quickly before we come back up. Say hello, everybody.
Good morning, Hoffler. Good morning. Hello. It's going to be some good stuff this morning with y'all. I can already hear.
Oh, yeah.
I know. Listen, I'm ready to listen. I'm happy you got them 2 lines open, Santee.
Okay. No, just stay right there. Stay right there for a minute.
I need to know what's going on, okay?
Absolutely. Eric, that's right. And we want James to be cool. But like I said, there are ground rules here and they will be observed, period. And all I don't ask you to agree with me. I don't ask you to agree with each other, but I do require that you be respectful, period. And I do require that language be elevated here. I don't know what other talk shows, radio talk shows do. Yeah, I do, but that's not what I'm not in this space for that. And I will not have it. I will not have it. I will not have it. Let's move forward. All right, everybody. Well, no, because I hear you because he's not a fool. People, people stand by everybody. People are very wound up, and I get it. I get it. And because there's a lot of stress. You just said there's a lot of stress out here, and I also know I take some incoming fire because I'm Reverend's daughter too. I get it. Some people haven't been able to get to him, so they come to me. I get it. I get all of that, and I can handle it. But what I'm not going to have is disrespect. Period. And that's the end of that. So let us move forward.
Period.
Okay. Mic drop. Mm-hmm.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Wow. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. We were Air America, but we have taken up the mantle. We're WCPT. We're coming to you. We're giving you the heartland signal. We're coming to you from the heartland of the United States, really, the capital of talk, Chicago, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Sending much love to Chad Larson and Reverend McAfee and Spike Moss and Gary Hines and Senator Klobuchar and all my people up there. I love you. What are we talking about today? We're talking about a lot. We're going to be talking about the Great Resignation. We're going to be talking about President Biden's falling poll numbers and President Biden's rising poll numbers. Polls are showing that Trump could beat the president or the vice president today. What's going on, everybody? We need to talk about that. So let's get right to it. Everyone was absolutely devastated when we watched the killing of George Floyd before our eyes. I think it just changed everybody. It was really, sadly, I hate to put it in a very colloquial way, it was a snuff film. How many of us, we hear about death, we might even see someone in a casket, but to see the life choked out of someone, it changes you. And it was devastating to watch. And so there were marches, there were protests, there were calls to defund the police, but many people said, I don't know if we want to defund the police as much as we want to reform the police. So we need the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We haven't gotten that. We thought we would get that with this administration. It hasn't happened yet. And so now we're finding that according to this Mapping Police Violence report, it's a nonprofit research group, the data shows that nearly 2 years since George Floyd's murder, the U.S. has made little progress in this space. Indeed, U.S. police are killing 3 people a day. 3 people a day. What is happening? Of course, we've got attorney Robert Patillo, civil rights lawyer, Southeastern Regional Director of Rainbow Push, has his own show on WAOK on Sundays from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. And of course, attorney C.K. Hoffler has her own show on WAOK as well at 11 o'clock on Tuesdays Eastern Standard Time. And of course, she has legal Q&A with C.K. on the Santita Jackson Show every Wednesday. She's the chair of Rainbow Push and the immediate past president of the National Bar Association. Let me start with you, attorney C.K. Hoffler, because the National Bar Association lobbied hard for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Were you surprised by this data that shows that the U.S. police today are killing 3 people a day?
Good morning, Santee, and to our wonderful panel and to the audience. I was not surprised. The very fact that during the trial for the murderers of George Floyd, the convicted murderers, Dante Wright was killed. And let's just, we have to put ourselves in the mindset of where America was at that time and how emboldened the police had to have been. And not all law enforcement is bad law enforcement. We're talking about those rogue police officers. I just want to be clear about that. But just imagine of how emboldened the police in the same general place, 10 minutes away from where the trial was taking place, to shoot and kill Dante Wright and make up some after thought, well, I made a mistake. It was all of that, for that to happen during a highly publicized trial for the murder of George Floyd, that should tell you the mindset of some law enforcement. And so I was not surprised by those statistics. I was saddened, I was horrified, but I was not surprised.
Robert Patillo, what about you? 3 people per day. The U.S. police are killing 3 people per day, according to this Mapping Police Violence report. Police have killed roughly 1,100 people each year since 2013. In 2021, police officers killed 1,136 people, one of the deadliest years on record. It seems like we're going backwards. It's getting worse, the relationship between the police and the citizenry. It's not getting better. What do you make of this?
Well, think about what happened in 2020, where we had a massive international movement, because the movement for social change in the wake of the killing of George Floyd was not simply a national event, it was international. We saw protests in Hong Kong under the banner of George Floyd. We saw protests in Australia, New Zealand, and Iran under the banner of George Floyd. Everywhere we're downtrodden, people found themselves under the boot of an oppressive government. They saw the killing of George Floyd as their raison d'etre to stand up for change where they are. And despite that, despite protests in cities around the country, fires, riots, everything you can think of, we were not able to pass a single piece of national legislation. And that tells you just how entrenched corruption is and the killing of black bodies is to policing in this country. So if you are those quote-unquote bad cops that are on police forces around the country, think about the way that emboldens you. Because you understand now that at this point, there's literally nothing that you could do that would cause any real change. There's really no array of horribles enough that would have to change anything on the national level or even on the state and local level. And indeed, what we've seen is an actual backlash against that movement. The police departments around the country have simply decided that they're not going to patrol communities. We saw after the Rashard Brooks killing in Atlanta police say they will not respond to any calls except for officer down calls for a period of time. We saw mass resignations in places like New York and Baltimore and Chicago. We saw stick-outs in departments around the country, which caused a spike in violent crime. City leaders had to respond to the spike in violent crime by basically going back to the police and groveling. Because one thing that gets politicians out of office quick is a lot of violent crime going on. That's the safety and security of a community, and it's one thing that voters do not stand for. So because of this, it emboldened police departments to know that at the end of the day, all they really need to do is not do their job, and that will kill any efforts of police reform. We also saw a effort on the political right to change any effort of legitimate curtailing of police killings, and they just were able to rebrand it as defund the police, to rebrand it as being against law and order. We saw the president of the United States at the time, Donald Trump, saying we have to have law and order, and they used that as a reason to do further crackdowns and further criminalization of African American populations. So because of the nature of our political system, the nature of our media cycle, where if it bleeds, it leads, they put this on the news, and also the failures of politicians on the progressive side of the aisle to be able to properly explain to the public exactly what they mean when they say they want to have criminal justice reform and separate that from the concept of defunding the police. We've seen many of these efforts die. So because no laws have changed, how will we expect any of the statistics to change? We haven't changed any laws. We haven't changed any policies or procedures. The cities that have attempted to put these reforms in place, we've seen actual spikes in crime because the police department has resisted those. So if you still send the officers out with a billy club, pepper spray, handcuffs, and a gun, we can't really expect them to all of a sudden start de-escalating situations. We haven't changed training at all. We haven't changed the criteria for police departments. We haven't put in place federal standards for what it takes to be an officer of the peace. We still, unless there's a video of you killing a black person in this country, there's almost no chance of you being convicted of anything. And police departments know this. Mm-hmm. So we can't expect it to change unless we're willing to make changes necessary to public policy, and that's why we haven't seen the statistics change at all.
And I want to hear your thoughts. 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. What do you make of this? What do you make of this mapping police violence study that shows that the police kill 3 people a day? What do you make of really a president who is pro-police? And you know what? I'm pro-police too. I'm just anti-police corruption, right? I'm anti-corruption, period. And I think that we need to look at that. But as some people have called for defund the police, which quite frankly is not a call that emanated from the Black community, I must say, Robert and CK. He has repeatedly said, fund the police. He's put $30 billion into law enforcement and crime prevention efforts. So he has not pulled away from the police. He's actually grown closer to the police. At the same time, we've got this issue with the police shooting and killing people. At a rate of 3 persons a day. CK, that's a lot of people to be killed by the police every day, CK.
No, that is a lot. And for many of us, that, as you said earlier, this was one of the 3 buckets that I focused on as president of the National Bar Association when I was president last year. For many of us who actually, like I did, went to the White House, interfaced with the senators who were negotiating the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, were very engaged with George Floyd's family, people who are on the front lines that I was there with who really led this effort, like Ben Crump, who really day in and day out, through cases, through clients, through networking, through all of that, through coalescing, standing in solidarity with groups of people who were opposing and who were very much in favor of policing reform, and who were, at one point, we were all optimistic that there would be a passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Having gone through that, I have immense frustration. But this is what I say. We've been in this place before. We really have. We saw that at the hearings of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, policing reform was at the core of the questioning. They wanted to know what she thought on crime. all of that is what's permeating throughout this country. And yet nothing has been done on a federal level, or very little. But as Robert has said, even in states and where you have local or municipal changes that have taken place, when you don't have a commitment nationally to that type of reform, not talking about defunding the police, I'm talking about reform, then even on a local level, it's hard to implement, it's hard to see change, because the police understand what the dynamics are. And all we have to look at is exactly what happened during the trial of George Floyd. The trial to the murder of George Floyd, that was proof positive. That's Exhibit A. That some law enforcement do not take the notion of policing reform seriously, because they're not being forced to do so, unfortunately. So, yeah, this is a crisis. This is another crisis that we have got to continue to tackle, because if we don't, then we're going to see more numbers of people being killed on a daily basis at the hands of excessive use by the police. Not legitimate use, excessive use. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the police using excessive use, shooting and killing improperly, stepping over the line, corruption. We're not talking about lawful, legitimate arrest and all that kind of stuff. We're talking about when it is not lawful. And then we got to look at the criminal justice system, period. When we have the sentencing of Kim Potter, that, very similar to the sentencing of Jesse Smollett. So let's just put that up there. Where you have a child who was murdered, Dante Wright, and the jury spoke that he was murdered by a police officer, Kim Potter. And then you have I'm not condoning or saying he did or didn't with Jesse Smollett. I'm just speaking about sentencing. And yet her sentencing is not so different in terms of time that will be served from what Jesse Smollett will serve. So there are a lot of reforms that are necessary. A lot.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. Correct Christian, I want you to continue to reach out to us. Thank you for that. Correct Christian is saying, Robert, the progressive is synonymous with dismantling morality. And snitches get stitches. That is from the inner city mentality. Is it not? No, it is not. What snitches get stitches, that is a response to the permeation of the civil rights movement, the permeating of the civil rights movement by the American intelligence community. When we looked up and found informants from the FBI and the CIA in our organizations, that became a problem. So, and when we found that many people, that the Black Panthers and organizations that were working toward uplift were being infiltrated by the local police who were being directed by the FBI out of Washington. That became a problem. Black people, whenever we have a problem, you call the police, Robert. Nobody's trying to say we don't want the police. We're not trying to say that. Like I said, that call did not emanate from the Black community, Robert Patillo. Why don't you speak to correct Christian and people who really misinterpret our experience? Because we never called for defunding the police. We understood where that was coming from. But what we were saying was, you need to reform the police. Maybe you don't need to call the police first. Maybe you need to call a social worker or a psychologist or a psychiatrist when someone's having a mental health issue. Speak to that, Robert.
Well, the problem with the snitches get stitches mentality is that mentality police departments have. That's called the thin blue line. Because if other police officers actually reported officers' misconduct, reported bad cops, reported abuses by other officers, then we could actually reform the system. The problem is there's a culture of silence that if you do know that there is a police officer that's on the take, that stays quiet between the officer and their partner. If you do know that there's an officer that consistently beats and assaults or kills or sexually assaults victims, that stays between the officer and within the department. So the problem is that they will not snitch on each other. They will not go forward to internal relations. They will not go forward to the commander. They will testify against their fellow officers, even if they see them committing a crime. Just think about the George Floyd contest. Those other officers saw Officer Chauvin put his knee on this man's neck as he slowly died, and they denied him to stand up to stop him. They shielded him. They assisted him in the killing of this individual. So when we talk about snitches getting stitches, there's the fear that they put into the hearts of other officers that when you see one of these abusive, quote-unquote, bad apples, then they do nothing about it. Because, this thing is not one bad apple and everything's fine. It's one bad apple spoils the bunch. And they refuse to get these bad apples out. So I agree we have to do something about this snitches get stitches mentality, because that was pervasive in police departments around the country. What happened with this quote-unquote defund the police idea? You had African Americans who were protesting, and then our well-meaning white liberal allies came in with those slogans. It was a very minor part of the movement, and the conservative media, the people who were against social change, saw these signs, saw these chants, I think at one protest in Minnesota, and they took that and they spread it around as being the casus belli for the entire movement. Similar to the way they took CRT, critical race theory, and just turned it into a thing by talking about it again and again and again and pushing it out on those Monday morning conference calls as being the talking points of the conservative media. They use their microphone on conservative talk radio, conservative television, blogs, and the internet sphere. They have a far more sophisticated communication apparatus than progressives have, and they turn that into what the face of the movement is, as opposed to simply addressing the issues that African Americans and other downtrodden communities were attempting to address. So what really needed to happen is black folks were simply saying, not that we don't want police around, we just don't want police killing us. Is that too much to ask for? We're not saying get rid of police altogether. We're not saying close down police departments. We're simply saying that if a young child like Tamir Rice is playing in his front yard with a toy gun, just as any 12-year-old child is playing, two police officers should not pull up and then within 30 seconds murder that child. And if you are against that, then you have to reevaluate your entire moral basis as a human being. If you think that is somehow stitches in an urban mindset, then you have to reevaluate your relationship with God and the Almighty and where you're going to spend eternity. If you think that is appropriate and proper for police departments to articulate around the country as being their policy. So when we say that we want criminal justice reform, we want our children to live. And I think the fact that conservative media being able to take that and twist it into this idea we're somehow against police or against policing is one of the most disgusting aspects of this entire movement. My eldest sister, who I rarely talk about, was served on the police department in Charlotte for 20 plus years. I am a big fan of police and policing. But what we want is, when a crime happens, for police to actually show up, to actually investigate and solve the crime. And what we also want is for when we call the police, that we don't end up being the ones abused and shot and killed. And I think that as a reasonable aspect for taxpayers, as African Americans are also taxpayers, we're not somehow still chattel in this country, to appreciate and to expect from our community. And I think that that's what our political leadership needs to understand, and not simply kowtow whenever there's a negative talking point from conservative media that scares them during election time.
Absolutely. James, very quickly, hold on one moment. I need to get, is that you, Shanina?
Shanina?
Yes, no, yeah. Dr. Knighton, because you are in Cleveland. Okay, talk to us.
So two different perspectives, okay? I think one of the things that I think about and I'm sure of is that there is, I was going to say not necessarily a misconception, but I think the training and the support behind the police force in regards to how to deal with other cultures is lacking. You can't send someone from a rich neighborhood, or let's say like a decent neighborhood, down to, let's say, the ghetto, and then expect for them to not have a traumatic experience if they don't know how to deal with those individuals. So because we have had those issues here, we've actually done reverse ride-along programs in Cleveland. And I actually know one of the leaders that is leading that, to where like police officers actually ride in the back of a car while a citizen drives them around the neighborhood and actually helps them to engage with the individuals. So one of the problems is that. The other piece of it, and I was going to say, this is something that I think that we really should be paying attention to that we don't, is the fact that a lot of police officers or people that end up going into the police force are veterans. I've taken care of veterans for over a decade now, and they will tell you that when they come back from service, the thing that they feel most comfortable with is their gun. That is the first thing that's taken away from them when they have to get on the plane and come back home from serving. Again, when they are overseas and supposed to be protecting this country, but again are subjected to killing brown people in other areas. So if they're going from killing people and like killing brown people in other countries, and then we're expecting them to come here and protect and serve brown people, there is this lack of correlation and this disconnect of them understanding what it means to protect and serve the citizens versus protect and serve our country. And I've actually asked leadership, even within the Department of Veteran Affairs, what are we doing to address that disconnect to make sure that they're not in those post-traumatic stress disorder situations? So a lot of these indictments, and let's say not guilty that we're seeing, if you look at the profiles of a lot of these officers are veterans, and no one is drawing that connection. No, am I saying that veterans are killing civilians? Am I saying veterans are bad? No, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we're not offering them enough support to help them to understand the difference. We're not addressing, even for our own officers that go into these bad situations where they're almost getting ready to lose their lives, because let's be honest, civilians do threaten and kill officers too. We're not doing anything to be able to support them throughout that traumatic experience, and unfortunately it backfires. And so even the officer that killed Samir Rice, when you look at the guys, the gentleman that shot those 157 rounds into, Timothy Russell and Melissa Williams' car, in Cleveland. Both of these happened in Cleveland. They're veterans. And it's not the fact that I'm against veterans. I love vets. I take care of vets. I just don't believe we offer them enough support. And then I wonder if HIPAA is protecting the public from knowing that this is that one factor, right? That PTSD is that one factor that's potentially helping them to not be found guilty when it's coming down to them being on trial.
Hold that thought. Because you know what, CK, if you can, and Robert, certainly, let's kind of shift over to this. I want to carry this over into the next segment as we talk about President Biden's falling poll numbers and President Trump's rising poll numbers. All this stuff fits in. All the discussion about law and order and how we're going to keep people straight without understanding how troubled many of our police officers are. They have high rates of domestic violence, alcoholism, drug abuse, all of that. They have that. No one talks about that. And you've got to believe that there's got to be a connect between the U.S. police killing 3 people a day. You mean to tell me you don't know how to de-escalate? And if you're afraid of the people who you have been sworn to serve and protect, you're in the wrong job. You need another job. So let's talk about this, everybody. Dr. Shanita Knighton kicking out the science, everybody. Dwight McKee is going to join us. We can't wait to hear what he's got to say. Stay right there, everybody, and continue to keep the conversation going. Morning Stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page and on YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Keep the conversation going. Keep it respectful. You can disagree. Don't be disagreeable. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. All right, y'all. Well, wow, Shanina. Thank you. Is James still there, Matt?
Yeah, he's still there.
Okay, please ask him to hold, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Yes, Santee, this is something that I've been passionate about for years, because I've always said it. And they were like, well, we evaluate them when they get out the military. And I'm like, that's not enough. I'm like, PTSD does just not happen one time when you evaluate somebody. You have to feel like you're back in those conditions again in order for it to trigger a response. And that's the thing. I just don't think that they have enough support when it comes to that. And then how do you, it's just like a nurse. If I harm somebody or if something happens, or even if my patient died and there was nothing I could do about it, nobody's helping me to go through that grieving process. So if you're in a situation where you're about to lose your life because you do, let's say, whether it's a traffic stop or you in somebody's house and they on the verge of getting ready to kill you, and maybe you don't die at one time, right? But next time you prepare, like, oh, I'm gonna make sure that I take care of business next time, whatever that looks like.
Security.
Okay.
That's different.
You get no. Thank you so much. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Great job today. Well, you get no argument from me. There's just a lot of pieces to this. I just know when I was speaking with CK, when I was speaking with you yesterday, and I saw this headline, I said, "Wait, what? Oh, three, three people a day." I said, "Hold on, wait a minute. We're not talking about that." As the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act has stalled, as our voting rights have stalled, as real reforms after everybody's been marching. Well, I told you it takes more than marching. Yeah, you should march. But you have to understand Dr. King and people like Reverend Jesse Jackson, these people work 7 days a week at this. A march is a culmination of some activity. But there is getting you registered to vote, keeping the people informed, uh, speaking with elected officials, pushing all the time to make this work. This is what Robert does all day, every day. Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. This is what CK does as a lawyer and as the chair of Rainbow Push every day. I don't need to explain what you do, CK, but this is all day, everyday work. Is that not true, CK?
That is true. That is true. And it's constant coordination. And also it takes a lot of resilience. So when we as a country are brought down, but for those who are in favor of policing reform, real policing reform, receive such bad news, get a vote. There's not going to be the passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, more shootings, more killing. You can't stop. Dr. King, your dad, Santita, never stops. Every single day when he wakes up, on his mind is how can he bring about change? How can he make it better? How can he help the least of these? How every single day can he make a difference? Because that's what he's been doing for 70 years plus. The same with Dr. King until he died. The same with all of these great civil rights warriors. Not civil rights people, not civil rights activists, but warriors. It's every single day pushing on all levels, inside, within, outside, within the communities, and making sure that you keep this issue on the forefront. And I think what Dr. Knight said was a great insight.
Oh boy. Because you know what, CK? Because she's working with the veterans and the police. As a nurse, she's like, wait a minute, y'all are missing. David Maciosha mentions that when he's on the air. The rates of domestic violence, CK, drug addiction, alcoholism, so many issues bedevil them. No one even talks about that. Oh, CK, yeah, I'm sorry.
And yet we're expecting them to, and again, I'm not an advocate for bad police officers.
No.
I'm an advocate for safety and for good police officers, for good police reform partnership, and having federal legislation so that everybody has the same marching orders. Exactly. You got to be trained on those marching orders. And also scrutiny. Part of what was at issue with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was, of course, qualified immunity. But also part of it was, training, making sure that when you do have these bad police officers, they're on a register. You know who they are. Accountability. Because that just impacts. We all have to be held accountable. But if you're not having to be held accountable, then there's no incentive. It's the hiring practices, though. Like, for example, let's be honest. I'm not telling you that every person that goes into the Army is, let's say, a bad person. So I'm not saying that. But, let's say, for example,
or say a sick person,
people,
right? Someone who's sick, right? Just someone who's sick, or someone who might, who might be flawed. I want us to be very careful in how we put it, right?
Yes. I know, and that's where I'm trying to make sure that I'm saying that. But that whole mental health piece of it is, I know that I don't have a life per se, and the military is my way out, because that's how they advertise it. Let's be all the way honest. They'll recruit you saying, this can provide you this, give you a better life, blah, blah, blah. So if I'm a person that's coming from a bad situation, let's say already, of where maybe my parents were experiencing alcoholism, drug abuse, etc., and I then go into the military, I'm trained how to use guns, I'm trained to protect my country, and I come back and act as if none of that stuff is going to still impact me. I think that's completely unfair, but yet
Hold on.
they get extra points for being a veteran.
Hold on. See, wait. We're about to come up. No, I want you to make these points on the other side. Dwight, how are you?
Fine.
Okay, great. Are you out? Okay, great. Stand by, everybody. Woo, got a house full. And James, we're coming to you. And everybody, correct, Christian? Everyone call 773 763
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, March 31st, 2022. I'm coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station in the heartland, everybody. Picking up the mantle of Air America and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Hey, Chad Larson, Pastor McAfee, Spike Moss, Gary Hines, giving us the music from Sounds of Blackness. All of our people up there sending you much love today. We're talking on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That's my official Facebook page. Please, everybody, join you over there. Become my friend. Won't you please? Santita Jackson and Friends, not the Santita Jackson page. I'm still getting friend requests there. I cannot accept any more. If you would, please meet me and become my friend on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And please like and subscribe to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, let's talk about police reform. Did you know that the data is in? No progress since the George Floyd murder. U.S. police are killing 3 people a day. Why is that? We have got Dr. Shanita Nightingale with us, infection preventionist, research nurse. She is in Cleveland, everybody. That's probably the poorest big city in the United States, and you're seeing a lot of pain there expressed. Of course, we've got the outgoing president, the immediate past president of the National Bar Association, the brilliant C.K. Hoffler. You've seen her on MSNBC, ABC, and BNC, interpreting the great cases of the day throughout the past few weeks, and we want to see more of her there. Attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, civil rights lawyer. They both have shows on WAOK. I urge you to listen to them. Of course, the brilliant Dr. Dwight McKee, social scientist from the National Action Network. Indeed, he's one of the founders of Rainbow Push, of Operation Push. So let's get to it, everybody. I want to get some of these headlines out the way, and I want to hear your thoughts about this and about former President Trump's rising poll numbers, and President Biden's sinking poll numbers. But we're talking about police reform right now. A lot of you want to talk about that, and we're going to continue this conversation. Dr. Max Wolf will be with us at the bottom of the hour to talk about the Great Resignation. Have you left that job? What's the deal with all of that, everybody? 4 million more people left their jobs. Wow. In the past month, something's going on. Thursday, March 31st, 2022, the day before April Fool's Day. Let's get right to it. Chicago, 41 degrees will be the high. Rain and snow. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 42 degrees, snow showers up there. The NBA, well, the Timberwolves fell to the Raptors. The Raptors 125, the Timberwolves 102. The Clippers will be meeting in Chicago with the Bulls. And of course, March Madness. What's your bracket doing? Everyone, are you ready to see Tiger Woods come back to the Masters? There's speculation. He is down there practicing. He just might come back. Would that be a glorious thing? It'd be wonderful to see him step onto the green, everybody. Russian forces are still pounding the cities of Kiev and Chernihiv, according to CNN, just days after Russia claimed to reduce military activity in the areas as part of a possible peace agreement. Heavy shelling continued in the eastern part of Ukraine today as the Russian military has appeared to shift its focus to the Donbass region. Several state legislatures have advanced bills restricting abortion access, everybody, adding to a growing number of GOP-led states looking to chip away at abortion rights in the United States. Arizona, absolutely, their governor, and Kentucky, their House and Senate have approved 15-week bans that restrict access to even medication abortion in Kentucky's case, and makes it more difficult for a minor to obtain an abortion in Kentucky. What do you think about all of that, everybody? President Biden is considering releasing about 1 million barrels of oil per day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to alleviate persistently high gas prices. Chris Rock, well, he had 2 sold-out shows in Boston last night. But if you wanted to hear him elaborate on what happened on Sunday at the Oscars, well, you were disappointed. He came into rousing standing ovations from the audience, got tremendous shows of support. In fact, people said that they saw him tearing up because of the love the audience gave him. But he said to them, "I will talk about this at some point, but I'm still kind of processing what everybody." Bruce Willis, tremendous actor, someone who has kept us entertained for more than 30 years, starting with Moonlighting. I mean, that's when he became a superstar. And we've just seen him with Die Hard and so many wonderful, wonderful movies that have entertained us for more than 30 years. Well, he has aphasia, cognitive issues that people have been noticing on sets for years. And so his family announced yesterday that he is no longer going to be acting because of this condition. And so we certainly wish that family all of our love, and we thank him for all of the fun and good times that he has given us down through the years. You know, over the past few weeks, we have been looking and talking to you about Team Hochberg. Team Hochberg. Why? Because we want you to have a path to financial freedom. If you have poor credit, if you need to establish credit, if you need to fix your credit, if you have high credit card debt, if you want to purchase a new home, if you need to hold on to your home, if you need to refinance your home, secure a VA loan, get a reverse mortgage, you need to call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID. 855-56-DAVID, or go on over to 56david.com, 56david.com. Get a free consultation. Believe me, no matter what your story is, they have heard it all and they have helped people get out of the most impossible, seemingly impossible, of situations. Sharon, 72 years of age. Miss Sharon was retired, living in a $300,000 home, but she was having challenges paying her bills. She couldn't make it on this pension, as so many people cannot do. And of course, she called an online lender, which was not the thing to do. And that she got the runaround for 3 months and almost lost her home. Well, finally, she called Team Hochberg. And Jose Rodriguez there helped her to refinance and lower her payments over $340 a month. Over $340 a month. That is more than $4,000 a year. It has helped her so much, and it can help you too. They can help you too. Call them at 855-56-DAVID. Call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Tell them what your issue is with that free consultation. They've heard it all, and they will help you. All you need to do is call 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit 56david.com. We have been talking with attorney C.K. Hoffler and attorney Robert Patillo, both of Rainbow Push. She is the chair. He is the Southeastern Regional Director. He's civil rights lawyers. And of course, Dr. D is joining us, Dwight McKee, social scientist from the National Action Network and from one of the founders of Operation Push so many years ago. And of course, Dr. Shanina Knighton. I'm so glad you stayed with us as we've been talking about no progress since George Floyd, U.S. police killing 3 people a day. She's been shedding so much light as a registered nurse, in addition to being an infection preventionist and a research scholar, clinical research scholar at Case Western Reserve University. She's had to, as a nurse, care for police and veterans who end up on the police force. And she's been shedding light on what they go through and on the things that we need to look at. Before I get back to this panel, let me go to James, who's been patiently holding. James, you want to talk about the police? What's on your mind?
Everything. I want to admire you and all your guests for y'all knowledge and courage. Now, we are witnessing the Gestapo in 2022. The Gestapo is the Nazi secret police. And we must stop playing crazy and realize what we are witnessing right before our eyes. George Floyd assassination was a message to us that they are coming for us. Dylan Roof's assassination of the 9 people in that church, one of them was a sitting state senator. It was a message to us that they are coming for us. Dylan Roof did not come up with that scheme to go in that church and kill 9 people. There's some older Caucasians sent him in there to do that. How he knew a sitting state senator in this small church on a Wednesday night? He don't know that. Listen, Caucasians have police, people. Slaves ain't got no damn police. We got slave catchers. We have an occupied army. Now, we don't have to talk about this before they slaughter us. This is what we are dealing with. And the U.S. government is behind it. They let it go on. They ain't trying to stop this stuff. And we know they ain't trying to stop it. Why we keep playing crazy? These people are psychopaths. And we know they psychopaths.
Mr. James?
I said, get out of here if you can.
Why don't you respond to him, Dwight, and then you, Robert, before I go to the other callers. Dwight?
Well, I don't think it is as systematic as you think it is. I think the net impact at some levels can be that way. But I think that it has really more to do with the cultural dynamic. I think that the doctor hit on a major point is that even these guys that come out of the military and have first preference as being police, is you have to really almost have to understand what brought them in the military in the first place. For many of them, they find themselves in situations, small towns, where they don't have a lot of options, where they come out of very abused households, where they see themselves with no future. And so because the military is marketed as an option to make you whole and make you a man and give you a way out, they come in with issues. And then you take that and compound that by putting them in combat situations where they see people shot and killed and maimed, and they're part of that. And then they become trained when they go to Afghanistan or the Middle East, wherever they go, to maintain and destroy. And then you bring them back, and you think that by putting on a uniform and changing their environment, that you change their mentality. That's a real mistake. And so you bring these people back, and they're already traumatized. You put a gun in their hand, put them in a foreign environment where they see people who have been already defined as the domestic enemy, because that's how they portray black people. And so you have a whole recipe for disaster. You have an environment of confrontation. And so when you watch these situations develop, you see how these guys really, the police, escalate, and they themselves are out of control. You have these Barney Fife situations of guys trying to prove their manhood and to, subdue the enemy. And so I don't think it's, systematic Gestapo, state-defined terror. But I think that the culture creates that kind of situation where the impact comes out the same because it's so pervasive, because the culture is pervasive.
Robert Patillo, your response before I go to some of the callers.
Well, I think what we have to look at is the fact that we've been discussing police reform in this country for about 150 years. This isn't a new conversation. The only thing new that has changed really is the resolution on the cameras and the proliferation of body cams and cell phone cams. Other than that, in policing, nothing has really changed. And until we're willing to have those hard public policy conversations on what is actually effective in policing, because look, if you look at the statistics, the communities with the highest number of police and the highest levels of policing, the highest number of arrests, are still the most violent and dangerous communities. So there's no correlation that says the more cops we put on the streets, the more people we arrest, the longer the sentences are, then we have to have any positive outcome when it comes to community safety. So at some point in time, we're going to have to reevaluate the way that we do things. We've talked about community policing, getting people from the actual community to police the neighborhoods they're from so they can have their outcomes. We've talked about getting officers out of cars and back patrolling beats, walking up and down the street, getting to know people, and having those interactions, and that's been shown to reduce policing. We've talked about reducing the load on officers, so that now instead of every time there's a fight at our local high school, we're sitting in an armed officer with a gun, a taser, a badge, a nightstick, pepper spray, and handcuffs. Well, maybe have somebody who knows how to deal with children instead of that. So there's various things that we can do to ensure that to work on beating these things back. But as long as you have this propaganda coming from the police side of the aisle, this back the blue, thin blue line propaganda, the Punisher symbol on the back of the cars, where they believe that they are simply there to crack heads and drag people in, we're not going to make any progress. So we have to win the hearts and minds of the American people and help white Americans understand what is going on in other communities, because we've all seen the disparities. We all know that there's an issue. The only question is, are we willing as a nation, do we have the gumption needed to actually do something about it?
Dr. Shanita Knight, you were going to really you were taking it, you looked at this from a perspective that many of us don't really think about. You're saying, a lot of these police officers and the veterans who become police officers have some real problems that we are not looking at. Why don't you share that with the audience?
So one of the things for sure is post-traumatic stress disorder is real. And for many that are not familiar with it, long story short, when you have something traumatic that happens to you, you can have these triggering things. It can be sensory. It can be anything. I can't even, it's so deep in that, for example, a certain sound will trigger you. Prime example, my uncle served in Vietnam. And when Forrest Gump came out, I remember being young and us being in the movie theater, and the part where they were in war, and this is the part where Bubba had died, right? Well, Bubba Gump, I can't think of his name. Bubba, yes, his name was Bubba. When he died in the movie at war, my uncle actually got up, and I kid you not, literally got down beneath the seat because he said the sounds in the movie were so real. Mm-hmm. Now, up until this point, when this movie came out, he had no issues whatsoever. He does sit and play war games all day. So this is kind of like his coping mechanism. He would sit and play war games all day. Video games, but I'm telling you, when that movie triggered him, that triggered that reaction, right? If someone is in a situation of, like, let's say, rape or just anything, you have these triggers, and you don't realize you have these triggers until they happen, okay? And then it throws you off. So what we've experienced, even in taking care of vets, I've had a situation where a veteran came in and he had tried to commit suicide, and when I was talking to him, I just gave him a hug. And he said this marks the 1-year anniversary of when I lost my comrade due to a mine, a bomb. And so you listen to these things and you hear these conversations, and they start to unpack them. You start to learn more about their backgrounds. You start learning into why did you go into the military? There's so many things that they can't even talk about because it's classified information. So when I ask, again, leadership within the system, well, what are we doing, as an ongoing evaluation for veterans that become police officers? We already know mental health is an issue amongst vets. We know that it's an issue with suicide amongst vets, even without serving in the police force. So now you then take that police force and then have like these PTSD events. Imagine being in a third world country where, yes, you are subjected to have to kill a kid because they're wearing a bomb, right? These are still brown people, 9 times out of 10 for countries that we're in, and we know that. So you go from brown people over there to brown people over here, and you are having to decipher what's the difference between the two. Having to decipher me protecting my country may not necessarily look like the same thing as protecting a community of brown people. And so there's these disconnects. And so then we have HIPAA that's in place. So HIPAA protects our personal health health information. So then now it comes when these police officers like a Michael Braylow, that's on trial, for Samir Rice, you say, how the heck is it that this man literally rolled up on his baby and shot him within a couple of seconds? How is he not indicted? And you say, is HIPAA protecting the public from knowing that this man had a history of post-traumatic stress disorder that we as citizens will never know about because HIPAA protects us from being able to know what mental health components went into it? Because the medical records is something that literally nobody has access to, right? And so there's so many different factors that we need to evaluate. But most importantly, when they said, we evaluate them when they get out the military just one time. No, people need ongoing evaluation. They need ongoing debriefings. They need ongoing conversations in order for them to be able to do their job. And this is not just, let's say, a police problem. This is a problem for anyone that's servicing the public. Many people don't even discuss the violence that occurs against nurses in ED, in emergency departments. So I'm just kind of bringing it up. And then if someone is experiencing that trauma, how is that being carried on to their job and, their fight and flight? I've had a veteran swing on me because I had no idea that he needed to be woke up a certain way. And these are not things that I would have even thought to ask, right? I'm talking about like literally woke up and flung on me. I've had somebody grab my arm because they had a bad reaction in regards to how I came in the room. I knocked and they didn't hear me. So I'm just bringing up examples of these are things that we do need to evaluate and that maybe we just don't think about. That notoriety, when you talk about the military and, getting different rankings and feeling validated and then the transition of having to come and work a regular job, that is tough for them because you go from somewhere being recognized as someone based off of rank and, maybe not based off of color, but based off of your credentials and what it is that you're doing to working a regular civilian job. It is a tough transition. And we don't discuss it enough as it comes down to people needing to police.
Everybody, and that's another part of this discussion about U.S. police killing 3 people a day. You're dealing with, I think we have to look at this in a very human way. Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee and Dr. Knighton, Dr. Shanina Knighton. We have to do that because there are a lot of elements here. And unless we're willing to peel back this onion, we're not going to resolve this issue. We're not. No. I got 10 seconds coming out.
Well, when she talks about a trigger, I'm kind of dating myself, but there used to be a Marx Brothers skit.
Okay, 10 seconds, Dwight.
They would say something. They would say one word, and it would trigger reaction. He would say, inch by inch. It's something in your psychic that follows you through.
Right.
It takes you somewhere else.
And that can happen.
Very,
I got a heart out, and that could be happening with these police officers. Unless we look at that, we're not going to get to the heart of this matter. We're not. No one is asking for the money to be taken from the police here. We're not trying to fix the blame, as my brother Jonathan, who's running for Congress, has said. We're trying to fix the problem. Not trying to fix the blame. Trying to fix the problem. What about this great reset? Might bring Max into this part of the conversation too. I always end up doing that to Dr. Wolf. I'm back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Thank you, guys. Remember, when you hear my voice, remember I'm up against this clock. I got to get out. I do not have any more space because I have other affiliates that need me out at a certain time. But boy, you all are bringing up a whole lot.
Dr. Dan wanted to chime in too.
Where is she? Being brilliant on mute. I'm like, girl, really? Well, of course I will have you do that. When we get back, I'm like, is she on mute? Yep, she on mute. She is on mute.
Most people don't know the first book I ever wrote that I was on the contract for was called Black and Blue. My daddy was a cop. I've done, addressed issues around police violence and a public health crisis. And I'm talking about police violence, not police brutality, not the act of an individual. people, but the act of a force operating under the authority, under the will of government. And so I make this distinction between police violence and police brutality. And what I would really like to talk about is how the system and the structure actually support the bad behavior that we see.
Absolutely.
It's real incentive for cops to operate and act the way that they do.
Well, you know what? Hold on, because we were no wait, because I want you to say that, because in fact we were going to be moving on to the great resignation. I end up doing this for Dr. Wolf every Thursday, but he's equipped to handle the corners that we turn. But I think it's important to say that a lot of people have something that they want to contribute, and I want you to contribute that, Dr. Deb, as the proud daughter of a police officer. And you know what? You know,
Dr. Wolf and Mrs. Loserby, and also Andre is still holding on the line as well.
Okay, great. Dr. Wolf? Dr. Wolf? Good morning. You know how we do. I've got Dr. Deborah Verholden, who I want you to meet. She's in New York right now, in fact. What are you about to do? I mean, this is Dr. Wolf, my friend, the economist, and really the investment strategist. He is in New York, and I told you, Dr. Deb, I really want you to meet him. He's the one who introduced me to Sarah.
I'm always here too because of the provisions of my home release.
Would you shut up? Oh my God.
No, I am actually here. Yeah, so I am always Madison. That's correct.
No. Hey, girl, look, pay no attention to him. He really is a brilliant guy, and he's crazy. But she is there. You're there? You're doing the ribbon cutting. She's the incoming dean at NYU's School of Global Public Health. And
First Avenue.
No, we're in Greenwich Village on Washington Square Park.
1 minute. Oh, okay, so I grew up down there. Yeah, I know. That's a nice spot. Are you living down there too?
I will be. I'm gonna actually be in Chelsea on West Midland. Yeah, not too far.
Okay, so.
And I'm talking about New York like I know the geography. I don't. So you're gonna catch me if you go much further with it. Sound like it.
My family spent 20 years living on 15th Street, so I know very well that area.
but he's someone you should know, and you should know. You all should know each other.
30 seconds.
Okay, so
I have to be able to avoid someone on site in New York. That can be difficult with subways.
stand by, everybody. Stand by. We've been talking about. Hold on, everybody. We've been talking about the police, Dr. Wolf. So if you don't mind, I need you to weigh in on that. But we have Chaparral on. Do we have Chaparral, Matt? Okay, great.
Morning. Yes, we do.
Okay. And Robert and Dwight are still there. All right, everybody, stand by. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820 in Chicago, AM 950 radio in Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And you know what? We're going to get to the polls tomorrow. I promise you we're going to do that. Hadn't anticipated this conversation about the police would carry over into Dr. Wolf's segment, as we're talking about all these jobs too, because people are resigning from these jobs. That's a big deal. But we've got people, Dr. Wolf, are really, they have a lot of response to the Mapping Police Violence Report that shows that U.S. police killings stand at 3 persons per day after George Floyd. And those numbers are quite alarming. But Dr. Shanina Knight, an infection preventionist, clinical research scholar at Case Western Reserve University, she's also a registered nurse. She's been sharing with us her experiences with police and with veterans and the health concerns, the mental health concerns, so many of the concerns and issues that face them. that impact their work. We've got Dr. Deborah Holden, epidemiologist. She is the incoming dean of NYU School of Public Health. We are so proud of them both. We've got Dr. D. Dwight McKee, brilliant social scientist. We've got Attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director of Rainbow Push. And of course, you are on Dr. Maxwell's segment every Thursday. He meets us here at 7:30. And we will, we're going to be talking about just a whole hodgepodge of things here because so there are so many issues that we are facing right now, including really trying to not have a global war. But we have got you. Is it celebrations by us? Is that Chaparral? I think so. Chaparral, what's going on?
Yes, Santita, we are their one-stop party connection, and we are gearing up for our prom season as well as graduation and wedding season. So don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546, and we can handle all of your prom setup, which includes your backdrops, your custom treat table, as well as also your hors d'oeuvres. So don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you, Santita.
I'm sure you want to weigh in on this police discussion. You know, you have the Somebody podcast. You just got back from South by Southwest. The Somebody podcast has been listened to by about 2 million people. It's one of the top podcasts in the United States. And of course, you know, we've been talking about police as you've been talking about police. No one accused the police of killing your son, but we have asked what happened with the investigation, of course. What do you make of this news that George Floyd, that in the wake of George Floyd, U.S. police are killing 3 people a day?
I'm not surprised, Santita, because of the fact that we have done nothing to address the issue. This continues to happen around the United States because it's acceptable. I mean, people have accepted this type of behavior from the police, and we have accepted this type of lack of investigation, lack of police murder solve rate. So if it's not the police perpetrating the violence, it's violence being perpetrated against us, and nothing has happened. When I think about what's going on in Ukraine, in Yemen, I'm like, it's happening here in the United States. It's just that it's black on black crime, white on white crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime, but we still have the onslaught of thousands of Americans being murdered daily. We have, I know in Chicago, we have one of the highest rates of children being murdered, in the world. And so it's just like, it's the silence is deafening, and nothing is being done. And so when we think about the importance of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and some of the provisions that it has, it breaks my heart that they didn't have. But like I've always stated, until America thinks of our children as their children, this will continue. Because you have to take it personal. Even though it was my child that was killed today, tomorrow it could be yours. You could be literally, Santita, what happened to me, I went to bed happy, and the next moment I was shattered. So this is how quickly these things are happening. No one is exempt, but I want America to understand you are not exempt. It just ain't happening yet.
Well, and this is where violence becomes the issue, whether it's verbal violence or physical violence, which is why I respond to it in such definitive ways when we are talking with each other as morning stars. I don't mind us disagreeing, but we cannot be disagreeable. We have to mature. We have to grow our politics. Before I get to you, Dr. Deborah Holden, you know what? You weigh in on so many issues, Dr. Maxwell. I know you're an economist, but one of the things that I respect about you so much, and I must say that my father and brothers and mother and sister respect about you so much because he is a dear family friend as well, is the fact that you do not wall yourself off. you, as an economist, you have not walled yourself off from the world. You really have a holistic view of where we are as a nation, and where we are globally, just where we are. So when you hear, I mean, you hear a lot of the pain. I want Dr. Verholden to weigh in, but I mean, there is a lot of pain out here because there is so much mistrust, particularly in Black and Brown communities, between the police and the citizens. That is not healthy. But a lot of bad things happen. You have police who come into these Black and Brown communities and they see the enemy. And I would say that that happens with some Black police officers too. They see the enemy. They don't see people that they need to serve and protect. Not always, but in some cases, and far too many cases. And so 3 people a day are dying. That's a lot of people, Max.
For certain it is, right? And look, I think there's always an economic element to this, right? Mm-hmm. So to the 3 people a day who lose their lives in a confrontation with some member of law enforcement, we could add that even though we decided it's not an issue anymore, about 800 of us are dying every day of COVID still, as we kind of count the announcement that it's over, right? So a couple thousand people a week of excess mortality are dying from under or untreated chronic conditions, whether those are diabetes or hypertension or well-known and understood heart, blood pressure issues. So there's a lot of needless death, right? Some by violence and some by omission, but death none the same, right? And preventable none the same. And, again, not to put the falsehood to your generous comments, but I do think there's also an economic angle to all this, right? Which is we do task the police with keeping a lid on a level of misery, inequality, poverty, systematic racism that is a tall order. And it's hard to keep a lid on a pot that just keeps trying to boil over without the use of systematic violence. And to some extent, I think it's a bit of a social connivance. It's a little bit of a letting folks off easy to think of it only as the misadventures of the individual officers. Right now, clearly there are some adventures that are seriously the project of individuals who kind of lost it, or whose command structure has put them in impossible situations, which is also a reality. Right? So there are individuals, and individuals have responsibility for sure, right? But if something happens 3 times a day, bad apple explanations don't work. Become systemic, right? And so I think we have tended, when we do talk about police violence in this country, and we do talk about some, perhaps not enough, but some, we tend to talk about it as this or that officer and this or that individual, and then folks draw their sides, often their usual sides, and scream at each other, right? But we tend not to talk about, hey, why are so many young people of color involved in pretty heavily armed and tense confrontations with law enforcement? Because as long as that happens, we can always strive to be better. And there is individual responsibility, for sure. But you are in a situation of having a lot of gas-soaked rags in a room with a smoker. And yeah, you shouldn't smoke in there, but, you're gonna.
Dr. Deborah Verholden, many people, the incoming dean of the School of Global Public Health at NYU, I'm so proud of her. In fact, she's in New York today because you have a ribbon cutting, yes?
Yeah.
But the beauty.
Okay,
fantastic. But you are the daughter of a police officer, an African-American Black man who really joined. He's part of that generation, God rest his soul, that generation of Black men and women who joined the police officers to protect the neighborhoods. So you would have someone you could go to in the neighborhood who you knew who would put out the fire, so to speak. Why don't you speak to what you've been hearing?
He knew the names of everybody. When a problem happened, people would come to him and say, my son is getting out of line, or I think he's into trouble, I think he's going down the wrong path. That robbery that happened at the store, I found some stuff in the room. Can you help me? Can you talk to him? It was a different day and time. Mm-hmm. But see, here's the problem, and I'm so glad we have an economy for, because if we can, equity is my thing, and systems and structures and policies. There's a lot baked into how police officers are promoted, incentivized, how governments function, that literally is breeding this bad behavior. And I love the way you describe it. The pot just boils over. There are lots of local governments And I'll use Baltimore as an example, but I'm not picking on them because they're not the only ones. I just was all the way in with Baltimore city government, and I worked very closely with the police. They would rely on a certain amount of income, and it wasn't trivial. Millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars that they were baking into their city budget to come from search and seizures. So baked into the budget was, okay, we got to bring in $50 million from searches and seizures. That's when they kick in somebody's door for a drug raid or whatever, and they push past somebody's grandmother, and then they start to assemble this evidence, and they say, well, we have evidence, and I've seen this happen. It happens all the time. It's plunder of the highest order. They will say, your grandson was giving you money, and we can prove that without that financial support, you wouldn't have been able to afford this house, and they will take your grandmama's house, and your grandmama's house will be sold, and that money goes in the coffers of the local government. The feds do it, local municipalities do it, and states do it. They bake this stuff into the budget. If you're a police officer and you want to get promoted, how do you get promoted? You don't get promoted from batting out other cops. You don't get promoted for saying, hey, my partner did a bad thing. You don't get promoted for walking the beat and having positive praise and endorsement for community. You get promoted and you get rewarded for closing cases, for participating in the plunder and extraction of wealth from communities, from making arrests that stick. The thing is that fuel officers also fuel the violence. It also fuels the misbehavior. And I do fundamentally believe we've got guys who may have come in with a whole different intention or goal. There was a point when being a cop was like a come-up for a lot of people. It didn't require a degree. It was like a paraprofessional position. There was some amount of respect to it. But then in order to keep that respect, you almost got to be Johnny Bad Boy. And this happens a lot of times also for African-American and minority police officers, especially when they're working on white police forces. To earn the credibility and the trust of their white colleagues, they have to really prove that they're not going to play that race crap, that they'll be just as hardcore, and they'll kick in doors and shove grandma to the side the same way that their white peers will. It's just so much that's baked in. And the reason I like to talk about those aspects of the issues is because that's something that we can do something about. We need to have regulations. If city governments are going to bake into their budget a certain amount of search and seizure dollars, where's the checks and balances to make sure that they're just not kicking in people's doors and taking people's property without due cause? I've heard countless stories of people literally saying, I was robbed by the government.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think these are issues that we can actually address, but we got to deal with not just the individual level issues, but also these systematic and structural issues and how this violence and the type of behavior and the type of reward and incentive system that begets violence is very much so baked in to our society.
Well, Dr. Wolf, it seems that, hold on one second, Dwight, because, I want you to respond. It seems that, we don't see the doors kicked down on Park Avenue and on the Gold Coast in Chicago, Dr. Wolf. This kind of tension exists, right?
So there's sort of multiple aspects to the police, right? There is an essential social service provided by the police, right? And so people do want that. I think that's a misunderstanding people have. It's not that people don't want cops or don't think they need them. People in lower income neighborhoods often need more police services because they're often victims of a larger range or intensity of criminal activities, including theft, right? It's a question of having a more accountable, more focused police department focused on the needs of various communities. And by the way, I don't think the police are the only story there. I think that's true about education systems. I think that's true about public health systems. I think it's true about public transportation systems, right? So if you look at communities of color and lower income communities, they get disproportionately enforcement actions against them, but they don't get disproportionately parks or schools or subway hubs or bus hubs or any public transportation or public health care, right? So it's about where resources are expended and how different communities are seen. Right? Are some communities seen as a gift? Are other communities seen as a threat? And maybe the South American sort of writer has the best line about it, but Eduardo Galeano, he always said, around the world, including in the developed world, including in America, poor kids are seen as trash and nuisance, and rich kids are seen as gems and promise. And so long as that's true, you're not going to have equal opportunity.
Dwight McKee?
And some of this is personal conflict. In many of these no-knocks are pretext for the police to go in and literally raise the confidence of those who can't protect themselves. It is a plan by it does not go to the government in terms of collateral excess. It goes right into the pockets of the police, and that's how they fund Christmas and anniversaries and vacation. In Chicago, I think there were like 5,000 no knocks in the black community, the brown community, and none in the white community, and the wealthy community. It is a pretext to plunder in many situations.
Robert Patillo, your thoughts? I mean, as a civil rights lawyer, how are we to handle this? No knocks all over the black and brown communities, no knocks in the white communities. Rich, poor, and in between.
This is fundamentally going to be an electoral issue. I know we concentrate a lot on the federal standards and what we've seen as intransigence from the federal government, dating back to Rodney King, dating back to Emmett Till, when it comes to addressing these sorts of issues. But what we can do is effectuate change on the state and local level. You can control your mayors, you can control your city council person, your county commissioner, your alderman, your state representative, your state senator, and we have to work on pushing through the types of legislative reforms that will fit these issues. We can put in a community policing strategy. We've seen it done in states around the country. We saw the referendum on creating the Department of Public Safety in Minneapolis and in Portland, Oregon, Seattle, places such as that, where the referendums failed. We have to get back out there and vote on these issues and have a real plan to put progressives in office that can curtail these things. And we have to stand up to the police unions. We have to stop allowing them to simply threaten to not police communities and allow violent crime to run rampant in order to stop police reform from happening. We also have to reform our drug policy in this country. What we saw with the mafia in the 19-teens and the 1920s during Prohibition, you saw Al Capone doing the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and people rum running and everything else. And it's not that they simply went away. We ended Prohibition, and therefore we were able to stop some of the crime and violence associated therewith by de-incentivizing the criminal enterprise, and they had to switch over to other methods of doing so. And when you look at the history of drug prohibition in America, it's been a complete failure. In the war on drugs, drugs won. They won by a landslide. So instead of us continuing to finance gangs, finance violence in our communities through the inflation of prices of street drugs that finance many of these criminal enterprises that motivate much of this street violence, you have to reevaluate that also. We have to figure out creative ways of policing, take models from across the world, because other countries don't have these same problems. Other countries don't have this level of street violence. You have to look at the economic aspects of it, as Professor Wolf stated, because in some what the police are meant to do is keep the rich people from seeing everything happening in the poor community and keep them folks down on the south side from getting up here into the Loop and into Magnificent Mile, keep these people in the SWAT and the Bankhead from coming up with Buckhead and Fifth Plaza in downtown, keep those folks in Southeast D.C. from coming over here to Capitol Hill. And they're really, truthfully, they're a guard force to keep the poor people away and out of the sight of the more economically prosperous. So once we start equalizing the economic system within cities, where you don't have vast seas of people impoverished who have no other choice but to join street gangs and to join, as Angela Davis called it, the alternative economy, well, then that's the holistic approach we're going to have to take to reducing violence, reducing crime. And that's what gets us away from this place where police are seen as really being a security force to cage in the poor people of our country.
what do you, in these last couple of minutes here, and I want everyone to stay with me because I want to get some closing thoughts from you on my YouTube channel as soon as we come off of the radio. Dr. Wolf, why don't you put a bow on this conversation for us? Because you and I were going to be talking about the Great Resignation, some people calling it the Great Reset. The fact is, there is a lot of unrest out here. More than 4 million more people quit their jobs. People, you had last year, well, no, 2 years ago, factory workers, who were working online in the chicken factory, who, these were brown people just trying to make it. Their white um, supervisors were taking bets on who was going to get COVID. There's just a lot going on out here today. And then you see, and you've got to see this, the killing of citizens by police as a part of that. As a part of that. What do you see?
Well, the society is an ecosystem, right? And as an ecosystem, the different parts are all kind of indecipherable from the whole, right? And so one piece is not distinct from others. Like, you can take it out for analytical purposes to get a clear view of it, but life doesn't work that way, right? So things actually interact in a sort of ecosystem format. I think that's kind of pretty standard. But I also just think in a society where material wealth is everything, and a small number of people have all the material wealth, you're going to have endemic violence. And then if that kind of fractures along racial, ethnic, and religious lines, you're going to have racial, ethnic, and religious identified violence between haves and have-nots. And I think the Great Resignation fits in there because I think a lot of Americans who have made up the lower, the middle class in the last couple of years, whether it's a recession or the Trump administration's games or COVID, have kind of come to the realization that playing by the rules is a sucker's game. And when that happens, people get unruly and violent, and, first and foremost, is not playing by the rules. Once they can, if people believe, right or wrong, that the rules won't get them anywhere, then getting them to adhere to the rules becomes extremely difficult. And when things get difficult and frustrating at the social level, a little bit like at the personal level, the miss or over application of force is not uncommon.
And we did see this before in the Depression. Remember, we had all the bandits who were out on the streets. That's really what we're seeing right now.
The 1870s,
yeah.
It's an old story. And we do have a predilection in American culture, which I think we have to own. We're violent folks. And lots of people around the world have similar social problems with less violence because, and I don't think it has to be that way. I don't think it's born that way. But we are a violent lot.
Yeah, we are.
More so than most other folks walking upright around on this planet.
Amen. Born of sedition, everybody. So, doctors, patients, we got to heal ourselves because this is coming from somewhere. And we are. Dr. Martin Luther King said it broke his heart to have to admit to himself and concede to the world that the greatest purveyor of violence in the world at that time, and even today, is the United States. That's how we're being discussed in the global South as they look at Ukraine. That's how we're being discussed all over the world. We've got to talk about that. We've got to think about it. We have to confront it, honestly deal with it, because we need to be not just better, we need to be right as people. We need to be right as people. I love you, everybody. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show. I'm going to get some wonderful closing comments from this brilliant, unexpected panel, because Doctors Knighton and Verholden stayed with us. Of course, Attorney C.K. Hoffler had to go and do television. But Dwight McKee and Robert Patillo and my doctors, starting with, of course, Dr. I was about to call you Richard Wolf. Can you believe it? Oh, Max, don't be upset. Oh my gosh. Of course. Well, his father is the world-renowned economist, Dr. Richard Wolf, and we love his work and love all the work that they have been doing down through the years. He's from such a distinguished family of freedom fighters. Stay right here, everybody. We're going to get some closing thoughts from them on the other side. I love you, everybody. Matt, thank you for a great show. God bless you. Stay right here. We're going to get some closing thoughts on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and Santita Jackson and Friends. I love you, everybody. Until tomorrow, God bless. You know what? I want to get some closing thoughts from you guys, if you don't mind. Let me start with you. Dr. Knighton, because you You gave us some
Dr. Knight
insights.
and Dr. Wolf actually both just dropped.
They did? Is Dr. Verholden still there?
She is.
Dr.
We
Verholden?
also have that caller, Andre. I don't know if you want me to put him through.
Well, let me put Andre through, and let me thank him for holding, because he wanted to talk about polling data. I understand. Hey, Barbara, you have a super fantastic day. And correct, Christian, you too. Andre?
Yes.
Hey, sweetie, we're going to get to the polling tomorrow, okay?
Well, I thought you were talking about the police. I was making a comment about the police station.
Go on. Oh, yeah. Andre? I didn't know that. I thought it was polling, but go on, Andre. We're still here.
Okay, well, anyway, what I want to say to Santee was that when President Obama was in office, he came up with some programs to this police abuse. But when Trump took office, Jeff Sessions came in there, when he undermined the reforms of the president, he undermined the consent decree. And now in Chicago, they have filed for an extension of the consent decrees, which is for 3 years. So I say justice delayed, justice denied. This policing situation here has gotten out of hand, and that in the sense that taxpayers' money is going to fund all of these crimes and with these policemen, and there's no backlash. Just delayed, just denied. I mean, the people in Chicago, we really do need to come together and say something to the mayor and to the police chief in Chicago, because that's long enough to have come up with these reforms, and now they file for an extension to get an additional 3 years. If you think about this, it's not like the police can exercise restraint. Okay, we had an insurrection. We had all those people down there beating up on the police, and not one shot was fired, not a warning shot or nothing. But yet, you pull somebody over a police car and you say you fear for your life because they wish to get their registration, and you blow them away and you kill them. So why was there so much restraint exercised after the Capitol riots, insurrection, man, and police didn't develop people, but yet you shouldn't kill about people.
Well, hold on. Oh no! Don't leave. Stay right there, Andre, because I think you bring forward a very. You don't have to say anything else, because what a profound point you have made. We looked at that. We looked at treason at the Capitol, and this is the U.S. Capitol Police. Most of whom who were not there that day. Like there was a blue flu that day, which no one talks about. They didn't, none of them, as they wandered the halls of Congress looking for Nancy Pelosi and the vice president elect, but they were really looking for Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence. No one fired a shot at them. Not one. I mean, you had this one woman who was killed. That was it. And so many people said, you know what, had this been a black group, they would have been shot down like they were the enemy coming from another country. It's something to think about. Robert Patillo, I want everyone to answer this question. Robert Patillo, what do you think about that?
Oh, you're exactly right. I think that we have to look at the fact that we have the January 6th insurrection wasn't a individual event. Remember, we saw events like this in Kentucky before that. We saw events like this in Michigan where they raided the Capitol before that. Remember that famous image of the police officers in the Michigan State Capitol with the Confederates who were armed with rifles at that time. So they did some flag runs before they got to the Capitol insurrection. There's never been a issue that the police could not, is that they choose not to. They simply put, do not see the humanity within African Americans. They don't look into the eyes of, when they look into the eyes of Rita Wright, they saw an enemy combatant. When they looked into the eyes of Dylan Roof, who just murdered 9 people, they just was a murder case. And that simply put us in the way that they view us, and the way they view us within this social system. The philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, in her seminal work, The Second Sex, talks about within the feminist gaze, the fact that women being seen as being fundamentally other. Not so much less than, not so much different, but fundamentally other. You know, she was very closely associated with Paul Sartre and Frantz Fanon. So Fanon they say ecosystem is yours. This all comes from the philosophical work of Kantism, which is passed down along that same progeny. So what we have to understand is until you can change the psychology around many of these officers, until you change the training in the places they come from, it's going to be very difficult for them to change the way that they view us. So as long as you're not having people rise from their communities and their policing, as long as you're not putting in these types of punishments necessary, where they actually think there'll be consequences for their actions, you're not going to see a change in the way that they police our community.
Dr. Wolf, I know you've had a hard stop at 9. You might have left already. Ooh, wanted to get some comments from you. But Dr. Verholden, and then Dwight, you can close us out. Dr. Verholden, your thoughts. Did Dr. Verholden leave? Well, Dwight, your closing thoughts.
Well, when violence is first imposed, whether you're a policeman or actor or a military officer or a family, a father who abuses his wife, when violence is first imposed, then society has a problem. And because America is a society that was built on violence, that was built on robbery and plunder and rape and taking other people's land, who needed guns to protect them from their own plunder, to protect them in their own plunder. It's the whole society is pervasive with violence in the first reflex. The Bible talks about studying war no more, because you become what you practice every day. And so we glorify violence, we glorify might. We're talking about now this war in the Ukraine. How we can just, if we just keep arming the people and arming the people and arming the people, that the mighty can win. And the only ones that suffer are those who are not mighty. And nobody's talking about negotiation. Nobody's talking about peace. Nobody's talking about resolve. Because you build might and violence into the culture. So until we change our value system, until we become a different kind of people, until we learn to study war no more, we're going to always have this problem. Until we build our swords in the plowshare, we will always have this problem.
We will always have this problem. What does my father say? You do best what you study most. We study war. We study war. And Dr. King did say that the bombs we drop overseas will explode at home. That is what we're seeing. And we've got to go not just in another direction. We have to go in the right direction. My grandmother Gertrude often said, God rest her soul, there is one way, the right way. Period. We can't just do better. We have to do right. And so let me see what you're saying, correct, Christian. And let me bring you up. Doesn't black politics talk about destroying the USA? Absolutely not. We built this country. BLM founders certainly wrote that. The conversations from some prominent black political activists say the same thing. You're completely misreading black politics and the black struggle in this country. The black struggle and black politics that comes out of the black church, we've never, ever talked about that. What people have wanted to do was deconstruct and reconstruct racist structures and classist structures that have hurt so many people. How dare you attack the patriotism of black people? How dare you? Black people built this country. We've been here since the 1530s. So many of my white European American friends have immigrant stories. Black people don't have those. We've been here since the beginning. So don't you dare bring that here. Don't you dare. Black people don't want to destroy America. Absolutely not. And America ought to be grateful that black people are so forgiving and so loving All we've ever wanted to do was be a part of America. I just hope that we will want to be a part of an America that is not imperialist, that we'll want to be part of an America that will not lift up racism and militarism and materialism, because that is the route to spiritual death. No, 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 no. Black people have never wanted to destroy America. Dick Cheney wanted to destroy America. How about that? The people who killed Kennedy wanted to destroy America. We didn't do that. There was a black man who tried to talk about the conspiracy to kill John Kennedy, and they put him in an insane asylum. I've had him on this show. Abraham Bolden, the first black man to be a Secret Service officer at the White House. At every turn, we have tried to save this country. At every single turn. At every turn. Dr. King tried to save you. Frederick Douglass tried to save you. Everybody we've sent to you, Sojourner Truth, Fannie Lou Hamer, we have tried to save America. That is what we have sought to do. Reverend Jackson ran for president on a more peaceful society. Wait a minute. On a peaceful society and a more peaceful society and a just world. That is what we have tried to do. Some people tried to run on war. That's not our tradition. And when you find black people who run on that tradition and who function in that tradition, they are black people who've been made by another tradition. They don't come out of the black community. That is not how we roll. Every revolution that we have given to you has been nonviolent. That's not what you've given to us. Nonviolent. We went to Gandhi and we brought it here. We showed you another way to reconstruct America. Now, why don't you follow it? Dr. King told you if you spend more money on programs that emphasize militarism and that de-emphasize spiritual uplift and societal uplift, he said you are going down to a path of spiritual death. Isn't that where we are today? No, 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 no. No, black people have not tried to destroy America. We tried to construct an America that would work for everybody in the world, that would be a true beacon of light and liberty and love for everyone around the world. Now you take that, you look at our real history. That is what we've tried to do. We've sought to do it, and we've been ignored. That is why we are here. That is why we are broke. And we are a broken people. We behave that way. So let's get real about what black people have sought to contribute to America. We were the first to fall in the revolution. And we were fighting for equal pay for equal work with whites and indigenous people who were working. First person to die in the revolution, Chris was at it, was a black man. Do not impugn the integrity of black people in this American project. Don't you dare. Everything that we've ever tried to do, keeping hope alive, having dreams, we have tried to save America. And we haven't stopped trying. And we haven't stopped being rejected. Now, America's got to decide what we want to do and who we want to be. America's got to make that decision as you bring 100,000 more Ukrainians in here. I hope they don't bring the Azov battalion, the Nazis here. Enough. Grow up, America. Grow up and decide to go the right way. Not another way, the right way. God bless you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Dwight McKee, Robert Patillo, anything else to say?
Good to go.
Love you all. Love y'all. Love you. Love you. No, nobody. Marxism. Look, in America, you can be whatever you want to be. Our best friends, first of all, the people who we owe the money to, the Chinese, they're communists. Our best friends are socialists. The British, our partners. We don't care about the isms. Nobody cares about that. We don't even have a democracy yet. I don't have my voting rights. It's not a federally protected right. It's a state's right. I can't get the president to sign an executive order to protect my voting rights today. What are you talking about? Heal America. It is autocratic. It is totalitarian not to give me my vote. What are you talking about? You throw around terms, you don't even know what they mean. In practice, enough with the flame throwing. Either you want to heal America or you're just trying to talk. You're not trying to have conversation. Now let's move forward. Love you, everybody. Yeah, no, we can make it pass. We just need to make the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, because you want justice in policing. You need voting rights. In order for America to truly be America. Let's do that, everybody. Let's do that. I love you, everybody. Love you, Dwight. Love you, Robert. Love all the guests. Love you, love you, love you. It's been a great, 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 great day today. Thank you, Matt. Love you too. Bless his heart. He was like, what? I've got to go do something else. I love everybody. See you tomorrow.